Well, once again, welcome to Connect Groups. Like always, I'm so thankful that you go to Connect Groups, that you love on each other, that you encourage each other, and that you have a lot of fun in Connect Groups. I mean, ultimately, we want our groups to enjoy life together. So I'm glad that all those things happen each week in each of our groups. So let me start off, before I recap this past Sunday's message, I want to just speak to you, all of our Connect Group members, because in my opinion, if someone were to ask me who are the core of our church, we do have our membership, and they're very much our core people, but I would also say all those that are part of our Connect Groups are those that have made the conscious decision to plug in and to be invested in our church. And so I want to speak to you and to even ask something of you and challenge you in something. So here's what I want to say. First of all, I want to just thank you for all of your sacrifices. Our experience is that people who go to Connect Groups almost across the board are also the ones who deeply plug into our church in volunteering and in many other ways. But I want to encourage you and just kind of tell you, so many exciting things are happening, especially behind the scenes. Even today, as I'm recording this video, I just got out of 2 separate meetings that are dealing with things for the future of our church. I mean, there's just so much exciting things going on, and that I can't wait to experience together. But in order for this to happen, we need you to play your part. And so I want to once again bring before you the major things that we need. So you're already doing one of them, and that is going to Connect Groups. I cannot stress enough how important Connect Groups are. So just fill in the blank here with my passionate plea about how important I think it is. I mean, you know my heart, so I don't have to recap all that. But here's a couple other just really practical things. We need you to volunteer. So if by chance you are attending our church and not yet volunteering, we need you to. And I realize some people, the reason they don't is because of health issues. I'm very conscious of that. I recognize if that's the case, just come and enjoy the church. Let us minister to you. So please don't feel any pressure or guilt on that. But for some people, it's just simply not yet making the decision. Maybe it's just kind of, they keep thinking, yeah, I know I need to do that. Now's the time. I mean, every spot that is filled, even if it seems to you a small thing, every spot that is filled is something that we desperately need. I mean, we need all of our spots filled, but we always say we want to go deeper. We want to talk with you and help you find something that you're truly going to enjoy, that's going to actually fulfill a part of how you're designed to be as a part of the body of Christ. So if you're not yet volunteering, please schedule a meeting with 1 or 2 people, either Brandon Lightnecker, who's our Director of Connections, or Stacy Crawford, who is on staff now helping us get our Saturday service going, to meet with them, talk about what you like so they can find a spot for you. But we desperately need everybody to volunteer because of just how the growth that God has given us and all the needs in our church. Here's the next thing that's important. We need you to financially be supportive of the ministry. Now, I want to encourage you and say that we are meeting our needs. So I'm not saying this because we're falling short of what we have right now. But for what we need to accomplish in the future, we need everyone to be first and foremost faithful in their giving. I can't stress enough how important I think the financial part is. And the reason I can't stress it enough is because Jesus couldn't stress it enough. He talked about finances more than any other single one topic because he recognized how finances are a part of our heart. But for us to accomplish the vision that God has given us, a huge vision, we need more finances in preparation for where we need to go. And so I want to encourage you to be not just faithful, but first and foremost faithful, but not just that, but to also be generous. Even if it's just $20 extra a week, or maybe $50, but for some of you, it can be hundreds of dollars more a week. And I promise you, all that money is going to be well spent in preparation for the future. We have a lot of things that we need to do just to get ahead of the curve for where God is calling us. And so I'm again going to ask you, and I would even say here's a specific request, if you're wired this way, do online giving and just set up reoccurring giving. This is great to get consistency so that you just don't forget, but it's also, even on our end, it's very helpful on a practical sense because we just know we have that consistent money coming in every week in order for us to accomplish our budget. So those are 2 major things. And then lastly, do this. Pray for the church. We need you to pray for the leaders, to pray for each other. This is an exciting time, but it's also a time of spiritual attacks. So pray. When you pray for the church, something supernatural happens on behalf of the church, but it also always aligns your heart with what God wants, and that's a big deal. I pray for you, and I know that you pray for me, so I want to thank you for that. Okay, let's dive in. Let's talk about this past Sunday's message. I'll do a very quick recap. What we're talking about is the final thing in this series about it's going to take blank to accomplish great things or to do great things. What we talked about is hard work. And sometimes when we hear hard work, we immediately think of the physically demanding things. That is partially true, but that's not as much true in a church environment. It's more of just the idea of difficult things. So when we say hard things or hard work, it's difficult work. It's the things that require, whether it's sacrifice or it's mentally difficult, it's spiritually difficult. And so what we looked at is the powerful story of Josiah, who, when he became king, he had no history. There was no part of his past where he came from generations of godly kings, just the opposite. But when he became king, his heart turned toward God, and he started to make some dramatic reformations to his kingdom so that people would follow God. But he made 4 difficult steps and led the nation in this. The first one is that it was undo. He undid the things that were destructive, and for them it was idolatry. And so he went to the temple. He cleared the temple, cleared it out so that the nation could start to focus on God. He also restored the temple. I mean, it had gotten to disrepair, and they started to fix it up. And it wasn't just for the physical characteristics of the temple. It was so that the work of the temple could be restored, so that people could start to make sacrifices and have forgiveness of sins and get the relationship restored with God. That's difficult for all of our lives because that same truth is there. When we are going to accomplish great things, we have to look at our lives and say, what are the things we need to undo that are destructive to us? And sometimes that's giving up relationships. Sometimes that's giving up ways of thinking. Sometimes that's giving up our personal preference. And as we talked about in weeks previous, the idea of dying to ourselves and to trust other people and to be willing to be generous. I mean, these are all steps of giving up ourselves and even at times undoing unhealthy behavior. So he did that first. But then the next part was, it was redo. And what that meant was there were things in their behavior that were of the past, and maybe for them it was even distant past of previous generations of the Israelites, and they had to bring those back. So for them, again, it was the restoration of the temple, but then it was also restoring that covenant. It was going to God and saying, okay, we want to once again reestablish this covenant we have with you, one that's going to be based on the sacrifice. Well, for us, redo is the same thing. We need to go back and say, what are the parameters that we need to set in our lives that are going to push us toward the right direction? And so some of the redo things are just making a conscious decision that we're going to honor God in our time. We're going to honor God in our finances. We're going to honor God in the way that we communicate. We're going to read His Word, and we're going to pray. And we're going to set aside time for this. This is going to be a priority. We're going to redo things we know that God designed us to do. And when we make these a commitment, as I said on Sunday, when you think about a person who makes the commitment to honor God in their time, in their finances, in their heart, through reading of the Bible, through prayer, when you picture a person that says, this is a commitment of my life, I mean, we all can logically look at that person and say, that person's going to be healthier. That person's going to have more joy, more contentment in their life, and that person is going to accomplish greater things. And so we undo some things, we redo. Then the next part was new do. and I know these are silly terms. It's just a way for us to understand. But new do were the things that maybe they have never done in their lives, and it was time for them to step out and do. And this is a reoccurring theme in our church. I teach this over and over. It's the idea that God calls us to steps of faith, the places that we've never gone before. And for some of you, that's the next step. That's the hard work that God's calling you to, is He's saying, it is finally time for you to take a step you've never taken before. It's time for you to go deeper. And again, I can acknowledge this, that's difficult. That's hard work. And then lastly, and this is the key, this is the key that holds it all together, it's the idea of will do. And I don't mean that will do as in I'll do it in the future. I was meaning that more of the strength of our will. And you got to give me some grace on this one. I just needed a one-syllable word, and that was a little bit better sounding than perseverance do, because that's really the idea of the will. It's the willpower. So I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to persevere to accomplish these things. And here's the truth of this. That's difficult because there's some excitement in seasons. Even at our church, let me go back to individually. Individually, you have that salvation moment. That's exciting. It's the 2 months, the 3 months, the 6 months, the year later where it becomes difficult because some of the emotional excitement has faded, but then also now you have to just keep persevering through. Well, here's the same thing for the church. There are seasons where it's exciting. There's growth, there's an added service, there's new ministries, there's just exciting things happening. But then there's also the next year and the next season, and there are times where it's difficult. There's times where there's sacrifices, and we need everyone to say, I'm going to persevere. I will do. My will is going to be determined to continue to follow the path that God has laid for me. So we undo, we redo, we new do, and we will do. And when we do these steps, it's hard work, but through that, God accomplishes great things. Guys, I love you. So proud of you. Have a wonderful discussion, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.